And hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Alcorn Immigration Law monthly webinar. This one will focus on business immigration and also a little bit of family immigration updates as well. So wonderful to be here with all of you today. And as Edith mentioned, we have the question and answer panel for questions. So feel free to add those in at any time. And let's just dive right in. There's lots of exciting things going on, lots of interesting things to share. All right, so originally this was going to be how Biden has changed immigration, but there's a lot of improvements that are happening that I am excited to share with you today. So I think if we decided the content and title of this webinar today, I would call it How Biden Has Improved Immigration. So it's always exciting. It's so different. I see that many of our participants are longtime people in our community, so welcome back. And so I know that you've been to some of our other webinars, and last year especially, there were a lot of bleak things to share. So it's such a delight to be able to say that there's progress and updates and improvements. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. All right, so for those of you who are new, my name is Sophie Alcorn. I'm a board certified specialist in immigration and nationality law by the State Bar of California Board of Specialization. My dad was also a certified specialist in immigration law and attorney. My mom's an immigrant from Germany. I'm the founder of Alcorn Immigration Law. And today, well, it's on our other slide. I don't know if it's there yet, if we added it. But today I was in Forbes, which is super cool. Forbes magazine just published an article 7 hours ago about how America needs a startup visa, basically, and immigrant entrepreneurs coming to the United States. So I've had a lot of fun over the last 6 years founding Alcorn Immigration Law and growing it out of my kitchen in Silicon Valley, not my garage, but my kitchen. And we've been able to help thousands of people. So it's really exciting. And our mission at Alcorn is to overcome borders and expand opportunity and connect the world. And we do that by practicing compassionate, cutting edge, and rigorous immigration law in service of the betterment of humanity. So whatever your immigration needs are, if there's a will, there's a way, and we've got you covered to map out the best strategy so that you can reach your goals. Our team is diverse and national. We are attorneys and paralegals, and everybody who feels called to be a part of our team is motivated by the human aspects of immigration, of seeing our clients as individual people who we want to serve and support to help make their dreams a reality. So we hire people who are immigrants themselves, or children of immigrants, people married to immigrants, people for whom this is deeply personal. And because of, I'm proud to say that compassion wins. Over the last 4 years of the Trump administration, by being compassionate, by communicating with our clients, by figuring out detailed strategies at the beginning, had a very high success rate for all of our immigration cases, which is very exciting. And our network, we're happy to leverage our network for all of our clients. I'm a mentor with 500 startups. We often speak to the Stanford community. I write a weekly column in TechCrunch called Dear Sophie. Recently, we broke into the music industry by supporting people to come for the Grammy Awards. So that's been an interesting adventure for us to start to learn about immigration law for Hollywood. It's because of our success in tech. So that's been fun. And yeah, we're gonna get to add Forbes to this slide, which is really exciting. All right, so let's dive in. So some of you know this already. US immigration, most people think you need a visa to come here, and then they want to get a green card, and then maybe they want citizenship. Companies can sponsor people for visas and green cards. Visas are much faster to get than green cards. But if you are in another country and you want to move to the United States, you don't have to have a visa first. You could just get a green card, and you might be able to even get it for yourself without a company. So there are many ways to come to the United States. And for many people who studied in the United States as international students, they either come on a J1 exchange visa, but most commonly the F1 international student visa. And that is a visa that allows you to attend a university, get a degree program, and there's work options as well for after you graduate. So typically most students, there's about 1 million F1 international students in the US at any given time. Some work on summer vacation or in internship programs during the course of their studies on CPT, curricular practical training. Others, many can qualify for OPT for a 1-year work permit after they graduate. People who got a degree, master's, bachelor's, or PhD in the science, technology, engineering, or math fields can get a 2-year F1 extension to work for a total of 3 years after they graduate. Many international students want to be sponsored for H-1Bs by companies, and then they want to be sponsored for green cards. And then one day, if they feel so moved after having a green card, people can apply for citizenship. So that's the most common immigration pathway that we see for people in Silicon Valley, but it's not the only one. We do work with a lot of startup founders and investors, and they use other visa types. And as I mentioned, people can self-petition their green cards, and there's also family-based options that we provide as well, like when people marry a US citizen and they want to get a green card that way. Yesterday, we found out that one of our clients had, the startup CEO had sponsored somebody for a work visa from Australia. And we just found out that the CEO and the Australian visa holder are now engaged. So now they're going to be pursuing the marriage-based green card for the Australian person. So we're very happy for them. I had a teacher once who told me, use everything, use every means possible. So we definitely try to be legal and creative with helping people maximize their options. All right, so a lot to cover today. COVID-19 definitely changed the immigration landscape, and we're still seeing that shake out. So things have been getting easier in general since the halt of immigration, the wheels of immigration ground to a halt about a year ago, but they're slowly starting to pick up again. So that's really good. So last year there were additional visa bans, green card processing stopped, certain types of visas stopped. So a lot of that has lifted, but there are still travel restrictions, and recently India was added to the list. So if you are outside of the United States and you want to come into the United States, and within the last 14 days, so that's why I'm saying 15 days, like be safe, be out of these countries for 15 days, because if you were in these countries for the last 14 days, you're not allowed to enter the United States. So this is one of the travel bans from the presidential proclamation that Trump made that he had alluded to in his tweets a year ago. Interestingly to me, Biden has continued this and expanded it, and it's mostly, frankly, having an effect on business travelers. Because there are exceptions, but they're very limited, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But moral of the story is, if you're in the US now, you probably don't want to plan a trip to any of these countries. And if you're outside of the US now, you probably don't want to plan a trip to one of these countries right before you're coming to the US. And if you're in one of these countries right now, you're either, and you want to come to the US, you either need to, well, A, not come to the US, but you're at an immigration webinar, so that's probably not going to meet your goals. B, go hang out in a country that's not on this list for 2 weeks before you come into the United States. That's what most people are doing. We send a lot of people to vacations in Mexico before they need to come to California. So that could be a win-win for some people, and then there's other people for whom that would impose great, personal costs, because they can't be away from their kids that long, or they have urgent, business needs that require their in-person presence. So for those people, that's where we would talk about a national interest exception, which we've been obtaining. That was the Grammy Awards thing that I mentioned, and also for scholars and other people. So if you need to fly directly from one of these countries into the United States, probably at least 6 weeks before your travel date, we would need to see if you can apply for a national interest exception to travel directly to the United States. And there's a way to do it through the consulates. There's an alternative way to do it through the airports directly in the United States, but the airport pathway has gotten cracked down on. And so now you really need to start with your consulate in your home country to apply for this national interest exception, NIE. And this is like a snapshot of the State Department's guidance on it. So it's very easy for students and professors and J1 visitors and people in industries directly related to solving the problems of the pandemic to come in. For other industries, for routine business travel, it's much more challenging to get an NIE approved. So just plan your travel as carefully and well in advance as possible. And if you need help, we can assess, what your home country is and what the rules of that consulate are and how they're enforcing it, because every consulate has slightly different guidance of how they're interpreting the State Department guidance. In London, for example, yes, within the last 24 hours, they just announced that all of the routine visa appointments between now and September or October are going to be postponed, and they're only going to offer appointments on an emergency basis. And there's a lot of contributing factors to why this is happening, but at a basic level, there's essentially a personnel staffing shortage in the consulates, because when COVID hit, a lot of people from the State Department were hauled back home because the government didn't want their lives to be endangered because of COVID wherever they were at post. So basically the embassies still aren't staffed fully. So even if they want to help people now, they just simply don't have the capacity to meet the demand. So there's a lot of delays with getting visa appointments and a lot of rescheduling still. Now, an additional new entry requirement is that all travelers to the United States need to get COVID tests or show that they've already had COVID. So if you have not had COVID, then within 3 days of your trip to the US, you need to get tested, and you have to show that you have a negative result, and you need to be able to bring this documentation to your flight and show it when asked so that you can enter the United States. And this is independent of the NIE thing. So whenever you're coming into the US, you need to have this. There's no waiver for it. Or if you have recovered, you already had COVID, because it's still possible, like even if you're not, if you don't have symptoms anymore and you've recovered, it's still possible with the test results to show up positive. So you would just show that you had a positive test originally and then get a doctor's letter saying that you've recovered, and that is how you can enter the United States in that situation. Okay, so that's the COVID part of all of this. And then there's additional Biden updates not related to COVID that are also happening. Okay, so when Biden ran for president, he did have a comprehensive immigration plan for how he wanted to reform immigration, and he has been his team has been hard at work implementing this. So it's very, very exciting. So originally they wanted to basically undo everything Trump did, and they wanted to modernize the system, and they wanted to welcome immigrants, and they wanted to help people getting asylum and refugee status, and they want to help improve safety and security and stability in Central and Latin America so that more people could stay in those countries as opposed to coming here. And they wanted to stop doing anything with the wall and just have better screening at the border. So they're hard at work on all of this. Have updates on number 1 and number 2. For number 3, they already changed. They put in a proposal. They're going to change the language so that illegal alien will not be used anymore, and they're going to call people new Americans. So, you know, it's a linguistic change, but I think it has a large effect on the psyche and the culture. So I think that's really positive. So we're going to be focusing on the top 3 and updates on those in today's webinar. So they've been very busy since January when he took office. It's been well over 4 months now, about 4.5 months. Right away, they ended the Muslim ban. We're still waiting for guidance, but there's supposed to be a reparations system for people who were not able to come to the US, for example, from Iran. In the last 4 years, the State Department is supposed to be providing recommendations. There's been a lot of changes, a lot of good changes, and a lot more changes are going to be coming. So that is very exciting as well. So the Muslim ban was one thing that they improved, and that's not complete yet, though. We're still going to get more details. So if you're from Iran or one of the other countries that were affected by the Muslim ban in the Trump administration, then please stay tuned if you or your family members were affected by that. Another thing that the Biden administration has done is change the deportation system to protect children, so that's good. There's several nonprofits supporting unaccompanied minor children who are being detained at the border, and they need to be able to be released to their family members in the United States, their extended family members, and also have access to lawyers. And all right, another big change that has affected our clients really for the best is in green card processing for both adjustment of status in the United States and consular processing of immigrant visas abroad. There's no more public charge rule. And if you had gone through this, basically what happened was Trump created this new 18-page form that required people's complete financial history and whether they ever got government benefits in any country and credit reports. And it was a ton of work, and there were a lot of contradictions. The form was like a minefield. It took a lot of time for people to fill it out, and it was a huge time sink. So I don't know what's going on with my computer. Anyway, if I get cut off, then I'm just going to join from my phone to finish the webinar. And just so everybody knows, I have a lot of content. I'm having some weird stuff going on with my computer right now. But I'm going to see it through one way or another, and we're going to get this information to you. So over the weekend, there was something else that happened that was very exciting. There was this New York Times article about a leaked memo from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, part of the Department of Homeland Security. And a lot more good changes are coming to the immigration system. And it's just so interesting, right, how the language of journalism plays with these systems. I mean, I write, but my TechCrunch column is very technical and like how to, and I very intentionally try to keep it positive as like all of the content that Alcorn shares here. But it's very interesting because the tone of the New York Times article, I mean, I guess readers like reading critical articles, right? It sells more. So it doesn't matter which administration is doing what, right? That's how journalists approach things. So article is fascinating, highly recommend reading it, but there's high level details in it. I've been trying to get a hold of the actual memo that the reporters read that was leaked to see what the changes are, but I'll share with you my interpretation, reading between the lines of what was in that article. So the first biggie is virtual interviews. So this would not apply to US consulates. This would be US Citizenship and Immigration Services inside the United States. Right now, there are in-person interviews. They're prioritizing citizenship cases, some marriage-based green card cases. A lot of the interviews for business green card adjustment of status have been waived if the people look approvable, but there are still people going to interviews at our local field office. They still want to limit capacity and have attorneys join telephonically. Everybody is still required to wear masks. So, but it's basically a capacity issue. Like there aren't enough physical offices where they can put enough government adjudicators to handle the volume of green card interviews for the Silicon Valley area. So nationally, one of the priorities is to move to virtual interviews, which would be fascinating. I don't know if it would be with a video platform or how they would verify identity, but this would be a wonderful way to modernize the system, build in more capacity and more efficiency for anybody getting a green card. There's also a big push to improve electronic filing. Right now, there are a few immigration forms that can be filed electronically and with credit cards. I recently joined the Innovation and Technology Committee at the national level for the American Immigration Lawyers Association. So we're working with the Department of Homeland Security to improve the electronic filing system. This is a priority for the administration. And for those of you who are startup founders, if you want to journey into legal tech and immigration tech, I think there's a lot of opportunities here. But one of the basic things that they're doing is just trying to get a standard language so that the government, all of the software companies, all the different systems can integrate by, calling the field, by like naming the fields in the software properly so that there's less data input errors and more can be shared. So this is a priority. On the other hand, the Department of Homeland Security has wanted to do e-filing for like 20 years. So, but I'm hopeful that we're gonna push it through and improve this system. That would be great. Another really wonderful thing, and I don't know if it sounds kind of bad, but they're not going to be as strict on who can get in and which applications can get filed. And they've already done this with the end of the extreme vetting executive order that the Trump administration had. But this was in the memo as well as an additional priority that they're going to limit requests for evidence. And so very curious to see how they're actually going to implement this change. There are some case types that get a ton of requests for evidence. The H-1B for outsourced tech workers, consulting companies is notorious for high amounts of requests for evidence, as well as L-1 visas for small companies. So this will be a great improvement. I don't know yet how they'll implement it, but it will be positive, and we're already seeing this as well. Also, I want to improve the H-1B system. I don't know what this means because I don't know who they want to improve it for. Like, do they want to improve it for Americans who feel threatened by competition from international workers, or do they want to improve it for US small business owners? Not really clear to me yet. This is the one, if you've been tracking my webinars, where I suspect that the final regulation removing the H-1B lottery will be allowed to proceed next year in March of 2022 for the electronic H-1B lottery, where because the Biden campaign platform agreed with the Trump policy of removing some of the randomness from the H-1B allocation system and doing it based on highest to lowest relative wage. So I'm very curious to see how this one will play out, but it might be with that wage-based allocation system for H-1Bs. And another priority is family reunification and trying to speed up processing for family members abroad, or creating a new pathway for people to come here while they are waiting for their visas to get approved or their green cards to get approved. So that would be really wonderful as well. So we will have another webinar on this topic soon, but another big change that I'm really excited about is International Entrepreneur Parole. And so just to give you a flavor of it, and you'll all be receiving information of when our next webinar is solely on this topic if it's interesting to you. But International Entrepreneur Parole is a new immigration program. It allows startup founders to live and work in the US to build their companies for 2.5 years. And then if their companies still qualify, then they can receive a 2.5-year extension. It's great if you're married because your spouse can get an EAD work permit for that whole time period and be employed at any type of job or be self-employed. And it's like, A, you can be here for 5 years to build your startup, and B, it's probably a good springboard to later get a green card or an O1 visa for extraordinary ability. But it means that startup founders don't have to mess around with the H-1B anymore, which is great. Where did it come from? It's an Obama era program. It was created by regulation. It's not a real visa. It's not a green card. Parole is something different. It's a regulatory program. Basically, the border officers have the authority to have the discretion to let somebody in the country temporarily for a specific purpose. There's another version, which is humanitarian parole, to help people who need medical treatment or visit a dying relative. So that's how Obama created it. It's not a visa. You know, you don't get a multiple entry visa in your passport from it. And it wasn't created by a law. And so it could be canceled. And that's what Trump tried to do, but there was a bunch of litigation and it's still alive. And recently, about 3 weeks ago, the exciting news is that the Biden administration withdrew the rescission. So they're letting it stand. They have adjudicators ready. We're about to file our first several cases for startup founders, and we're excited to see how it will work and what the approval notice will look like, what the processing time will be. There's no processing time yet because people have not yet started applying for it, but we hope to be one of the first. Now, if somebody might be qualified, here's what we will ask them to find out. And if you would like to see if you're qualified, we have a link to our questionnaire that will ask you some of these questions that you can fill out about your company. Our attorney will review it, and then you can be scheduled for a consultation to discuss. But what we're looking for is if your company was established in the US and it's less than 5 years old, we need you to own at least 10% of the company. And we need you to be targeting having a role like CEO or CTO, COO, president. We need you to have a leadership role in the company that you're planning on having in the future. So if all of the answers to that prior slide were yes, then we need to either show that you raised $250K from US angels or VCs, or you got $100K in government grants like SBIR grants from the US federal government, and that you got the funding within the last 18 months. And if you do not meet either of those, then we're evaluating on a case-by-case basis to see if you partially meet them and if there's other evidence that your startup has a really substantial potential to rapidly grow in the US and to create jobs in the United States. So, you know, some founders are bootstrapping, or sometimes the government grants are slightly less, or maybe the money was raised 24 months ago. So those are all situations that we can discuss. Now, moving on from International Entrepreneur Parole, there's also the potential for new laws to happen in this administration. And some of them are comprehensive immigration reform, some of them are about dreamers, one of them is potentially a startup visa. So I will share more with you about that now. So the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021 is like the Biden campaign policy. And it was introduced in both the House and the Senate, but it's very unlikely that this bill will go forward, but it sort of encapsulates the entire Democratic platform for immigration reform. And it looks like for immigration reform to happen, we're not going to be able to get it through with an omnibus bill. We're going to have to tease out specific issues, build coalitions, get Democrat and Republican buy-in, and get those issues addressed on a case-by-case basis. But there's some really cool ideas in here that would be great for startup immigration and people in tech that I want to share in general. And it shows the motivation and the direction of where this is going, hopefully. So the Democratic platform involves more working visas, which is pretty cool. They also want to get rid of the visa bulletin backlogs. They want to reduce the waits that people have to have for their priority dates, especially people born in India and China. They want to get rid of the limits per country on who can come to the United States with green cards, which I think would be wonderful. Because basically the system that it is now penalizes people by where they happen to be born in. And so I don't think that's a great policy to have, but you know, I would say nobody's asking me, but we'll get to that slide. People have asked me, so I'm not going to say that. Yeah, so hopefully we'll create a system where there's no more backlog based on the location of your birth. That would be great. Another proposal that I find wonderful for our group is that if people get a PhD in a science, technology, engineering, or math field from a United States university, that they would automatically, this is not a law, you can't do it yet, but if it happens, those people would automatically be able to self-sponsor a green card right after they graduate. Basically like as easy as like a marriage-based green card. So I love this idea because I'm a mom, I have kids, and I'm imagining if I was in another country and I wanted them to pursue their dreams in the United States, I'd much rather be able to say to them, oh honey, you know, not just like find yourself a spouse in the US, but just go get your PhD and then you'll be fine. You can just get a green card that way. So that'd be wonderful. They also want to make the work permits for spouses of H-1B holders permanent. They've been in litigation a lot, so that's been challenging for people. They want to protect kids who are turning 21 to still be included in their family's green card process so they don't age out. And they want to create a new regional green card for local economies and governments to be able to petition to bring workers directly to that geographic area, which would be super cool. There's also a really big push, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier, about keeping families together. So some of the proposals, and once again, these are proposals, not laws yet, but if somebody has an improved I-130, that they would be able to come to the US and wait until their green card turn in line happens. So that would be so amazing because there's so many people who are stuck out of the country for years and years waiting for their turn. I don't know why they wouldn't just change the system, but anyway, it's kind of like a silly workaround. It doesn't address the root cause of the problem because the people wouldn't be able to get green cards right away. You might as well help them get the green cards right away. But anyway, at least they could come to the US sooner. They would want to eliminate the 3 and 10-year bars, which would be great. Hopefully none of you know what that is because you've all been following the rules. But if you accidentally or intentionally overstayed in the US for more than 180 days after your status expired and you leave, you're not allowed to come back in for 3 years. And if you've overstayed more than a year and you leave, you can't come back in 10 years. So that's a major problem for a lot of people. And often their only way out is to get married to a US citizen. There's other things as well to, you know, improve the green card lottery and do other technical things to make more green cards available every year for people, which would be cool. Also, a major part of this proposal would support people who are in the US and who are undocumented or who are here with a work permit called TPS. Support a lot of Venezuelan tech professionals who are now eligible for TPS. Burma is another country that just got added to the TPS list. There's more details on that in our newsletter that just came out today from Alcorn Immigration Law. But basically, it's a path to citizenship, and it would allow people in those categories to get green cards and become legal in the United States and one day qualify for citizenship. You'd have to be current on your taxes, but most people who are undocumented still pay taxes. Okay, now the other policy angle that politicians are taking, trying to cut up the omnibus bill into piecemeal and get particular issues across and passed. A big one is the DREAM Act to help young people who were brought to the United States as children or overstayed, and they do not have valid immigration status. They could be deported, but they have something called DACA, which is a work permit if they qualify. So it could be that the strategy that Congress takes is to only get this DREAM Act bill through first, and then we can take other immigration issues in a piecemeal manner. It's just hard because when you try to lump everything together, there's so much negotiation that needs to happen on all the individual points that the whole thing can get stalled. This is a piece that they seem to agree on, and it would just open up a lot more. If we could just get DACA solved, then there would be some breathing room around immigration and people could be more creative and strategic about the other combinations of things that we could get through. There's different variations between the House and Senate bills for the DREAM Act, different age requirements, different requirements about how long you've been in the United States and how long you've lived here. Basically, don't commit any crimes. And then if you're already in the US and you might need to benefit from this, just stay here and hopefully it'll cover you and happen soon. And then the other thing that I've gotten to work on, which was so exciting, and some of you might have heard me talk about this already, but it's still just such a thrilling experience. I wanted to share it. I got tapped by the National Venture Capital Association to edit a draft bill for a member of Congress of a startup visa. And this happened last December, and I read the bill and I was like, oh my God, this is not okay. There's all these problems with it. They want caps and lotteries and quotas and backlogs. And I love the concept, but I don't want this to be the law. And I had this opportunity to decide, like, if I'm just gonna be like, oh, okay, you should do it, you guys, or if I was actually gonna like go into it. So I did it, and I redlined the whole draft bill, and I made hundreds of comments and changes and suggestions, and it was like, no annual amounts, no lottery, no, not subject to visa bulletin, spouse gets immediate work authorization, children get to be included in everything, there should be premium processing. So I was like adding all this in and just imagining my dream system for how it would practically work to take advantage of this law. And I didn't hear from them for several months, and I was like, well, I have no idea if this is happening. But several weeks ago, they came back to me and they were like, hey, Sophie, will you please check out this new version? And I was so nervous to open the document. And then I realized that the congressional staffers had like worked on all of my changes and built them into the law and written it in real like law text, not just my Microsoft Word inline comment thing. And so 98% of the changes that I recommended will now be in that draft bill that I hope is going to be released really soon. But I hope they can make it bipartisan with both the Democrats and the Republicans wanting it. As it stands, it would be a Democrat House member that would introduce it. But I think it's so advantageous to both political parties to have a start of visas. So hopefully that is one area besides DACA where there can be immediate agreement and a real law. And we have IEP, which is great. This would be a little better because it would be a multiple entry visa. It wouldn't be under the parole authority, it would be permanent. And there's also a path for co-founders to come and early stage employees who don't have as much equity. And there would be a specific path to a green card as well. So all of that would be super cool. Okay, so that's my presentation. We're going to be emailing you a bunch of info with the recording of this webinar that you can rewatch on YouTube, and our questionnaire for International Entrepreneur Parole if you want to fill that out, and some of our infographics about IEP, and also this options chart. So you'll have all of that in your email. We usually try to get it to you by the end of the week. And that Forbes article that just came out, I'll see if Edith can include the link as well so you can read that. We're also putting it on our social media. And you'll have our contact information. Support, thank you for attending today. Lovely to have you as always, and check your emails by the end of the week for the resources, the links, all the things that I mentioned. And as always, if you'd like to chat, please reach out to our office and we can schedule a consultation. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a lovely rest of your day, wherever you are in the world, or night, and happy summer almost in the Northern Hemisphere, and have a great weekend ahead, and talk to you all soon. Thanks for your support. Bye.